Not working. 1, 2. Vous m'entendez? Non?
1, 2, 1, 2. Bonjour à tous.
Okay, so hi everybody. It's not working? It's working? It's working? No? 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2. Vous m'entendez? 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. C'est mieux sans? Ouais, mais après, c'est pour nous récupérer. 1, 2.
1, 2, 1, 2. 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Bonjour. Est-ce que c'est mieux? Bonjour à tous. Un, deux, un, deux, un, deux, un, deux. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2.
So you can hear me well or not? No? On va attendre le micro-cravate. Okay. So, s'il vous plaît. So, as I said, we'll do this session in English because all of speakers are not French. So that's why we do this session in English. Thanks for coming for the 18th edition of Paris Vidéothèque. So here at Le Wagon. So few information about the association. And so we organized a meta meetup at IBC with Barcelona Videothèque and London Videothèque. So it was great to be able to meet again. And we are already looking forward to organize this meta meetup next year. And as always, we are looking for talks and sponsors. So if you are working on new technologies, if you are working on interesting projects, and I'm sure you are, please send us an email at this address, and you will be able to come and to talk for our next meetup. Our events are free, and it's due to the fact that some companies are helping us. Ateme is one of those. So I want to invite Remy Baudoin, so Chief Strategy Officer of Ateme, so to talk about Ateme and also why they are supporting us.
Thank you, Jules. Thank you. So as you can see, there are a few Atemians in the room. So as Jules mentioned, I'm Remy. I'm running strategy and marketing in Ateme. So this is the story of Ateme. I won't give you the commercial pitch. What we do compression, packager, streaming, CDN. So we do most of the data plane between acquisition to delivery. I would say almost glass to glass, but we don't have camera, we don't have player. Okay. You can see that we have convinced all the tier ones around the planet to use our solutions. Always, I'm not arrogant. We don't have all the operations of all tier ones, but we have contribution, primary distribution, redistribution over cable, satellite, IPTV, OTT. All of them, they have at least one Ateme solution. Whatever this is for serving a linear service, a fast channel, a VOD workflow, and so on and so on. We grow big time. You have the number on the top right. Okay, so we keep growing in terms of number. We are profitable. And all the money that we win, we re-inject into the company, either for organic growth. We are 120 people. You will see later on the growth of the headcount, but also the external growth. For a couple of years now, we merged with Anivia so that we've complement the compression, the core DNA of Ateme, with the core DNA of Anivia that was streaming, so that we control the end-to-end. We could convince the big boys and girls of our industry to come to our solution because of the innovation. Half of the company is made of R&D. Most of the company is made of engineers, even the sales and the pre-sales guys. Okay. Innovation was the DNA of Anivia, was the DNA of Ateme, so when we merged, it was a perfect fit. Just to illustrate that, you have here an extract of our research and innovation team. So we have 260 R&D engineers. Among them, you have between 20 to 30 people aside dedicated to research and innovation. So they do research about compression, new compression format like VVC, like AV1 and AV2. Not only about video, it involves also audio, it involves many other aspects of the experience, latency. They are also involved into analytics, our analytics, not the Conviva one, David. Please, hold your horses. So they are doing many things, and they try. If you go on Google, you will find that we are the front leader of the ATSC 3.0 standard. That was made possible because this guy, Michael, at some point 3 years ago, 4 years ago, decided to invest on scalable HEVC. Scalable codec was a disaster to date before that. But he said, no, there is something to do to enable the next-gen DVB-T standard, if I may say, but ATSC 3.0 standard in the US, terrestrial standard. And we could convince Sinclair to standardize on us. Now, half of the ATC stations are using Ateme solution. Cherry on the cake, that's why you see the picture of Michael Rollet, our CTO. We have been awarded with 3 Emmys in 2020. 3 Emmys for what we call the audience-aware streaming. How we can adapt the quality, the bit rate, based on content complexity. Just as an example, this is a workflow that Michael is working on, the end-to-end. You have the various stages, and his team, among other things, is working on how we can increase the quality of experience based on all the server-side analytics that we can collect, and we can look back into the encoder, the packager, or the CDN. And we have multiple patents, as I show here. Obviously, there are multiple standards that we are involved, and more. We entered 5G last year. We entered the metaverse, because we have to study it this year, and so on. I talked earlier about the growth. So again, you have the numbers, but we don't care about the numbers too much. Just look at the headcount. In 2017, we were 220 people. Now we have more than doubled. So we have added the 100 people, 120 people from Anivia, but we are adding this year again 80 people. And amongst these 80 people, just 50 in terms of R&D. I'm talking about net. There are some departure. There is always a turnover, meaning that compared to this year, we have added 70, 80 engineers. Some of them left. We are always looking for talents. This year will be great. We published the numbers. We are public, so you can check everything online. We will publish what we call the H1 results, the profitability, next week. You will check. We continue the growth. So we need talents. We need talents in R&D, big time. We need talents in what we call customer engineering. It's not only pre-sales, it's also support, deployment, customer success. And in many different types of languages, many different types of skills. You have the website if you want to have a look, but also you have an HR person, the blonde lady over there. Stand up, Anna. Stand up. That you can collect. Last but not least, we are looking forward. So we built what we call the Customer Advisory Board. On here, you have only Ateme customers with exec in these organizations. Discovery Warner Bros. Is an Ateme customer, Comcast is an Ateme customer, and so on and so on. These guys are VP, SVP, and their goal is actually to challenge us, not on the day-to-day roadmap. We know what we have to do with HLS and Pontos, blah, blah. No, they are here to help us challenge on the 3 to 5 year horizon. Where do we go? Where our industry is likely to go in 3 to 5 years. Metaverse? Yes, no, maybe. A subset of the metaverse for premium event? We don't know. Gaming? What we can acknowledge further to the IBC, for those of you who were here, is that there is a convergence between the experiences. There is a convergence between broadcast and streaming, obviously, but there is also a convergence between gaming and broadcast, or gaming and streaming. There is a convergence between streaming and social media. Not everything will be applicable to Ateme, but some of these will be applicable to Ateme. And so we are thinking, and this group helps us to think about where Ateme will be in 5 years from now. So we need talent to help us today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. I'm done. Thank you.
So thanks, Remy, for the presentation, and thanks also for the support. So now, what's the program for tonight? So we'll have 3 talks. We'll start with Conviva, David Collet. So he will talk about the state of streaming. Then we'll move to Jim Hall, who will talk about the content security standardization. And we'll finish with Frédéric Cretet from Embrace to talk about workflow orchestration using a low-code approach. So David, if you can come for the first talk.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is David Collet. I joined Conviva recently, 5 months ago. I'm a commercial person and not an engineer or technician. So if you fire lots of questions, you will have more questions and defer to other people. But I'm still very happy to be here and talk to you about our report. Every quarter we publish a report called the State of Streaming that gives a global overview about a certain number of key KPIs and information that are aggregated from the data we collect. I'll tell you at the end where this data is coming from and how and why it can be trusted. So important, the data there are compared to last year. So the same quarter last year, how things have moved from one year to another. So let's just jump straight right in. I think there's a couple of key trends that we can share with you overall. Bit rates are rising. We'll talk about it a bit later, but obviously everyone is increasing the quality of the content and the experience that the user wants to have, and that's true across the world, across the board. Android phone is picking up shares and presence on TV, on mobile, so we hear and we see more and more of Android across the landscape and across the industry. Also, in the context that we know today, the economical context, the announcement by Disney, Netflix, and a few others, ads are here to stay and will continue to grow in terms of presence of AVOD and advertising-based services or integration of advertising within paid services with entry fees and then an opportunity to be served ads to pay less. Also, smart TV is a big surprise in this quarter. There's a massive explosion of smart TV globally. We'll give you the opportunity to dive into this, but I think it's very interesting to see it's true across the board. And basically streaming today, despite the growth and the place of mobile, streaming is a smart TV or a big screen thing at the end. So if we look at the streaming viewing time increase, we can see that 14% globally. It's the highest increase we've seen since we published this number. So streaming is going big for sure. Obviously, Europe, America, very minor growth, although 20% is not bad. Good to notice that Asia and LATAM are really exploding, and I think these are two key regions that people will keep looking at when it comes to adding more customers and getting more service to be rolled out, both by local operators, but also by global operators that are trying to capture the business in this part of the world. The Disneys, but also the Canal Pluses and the Comcast and all these other sort of large group. When we look at the global quality analysis by region, I think something that is interesting is really the growth of bitrate across the board. And I think that reflects the whole industry trying to say, okay, streaming has now passed linear TV in the US, it's here to stay, it's critical, let's invest with Ultra HD, 4K, spatial audio, Adobe. That means the quality also of the video, the quality of the audio is reflected in these growth across the board. I think it's interesting for Europe to see that the average minute per play is where we perform the best, and that's not a quality metrics per se, but it gives you a good insight of where people consume the most, and you can see that Asia, interestingly, is a lot lower compared to Europe. And maybe we'll correlate this later to the type of device that dominates the consumption of streaming between this different region. The video start time is an interesting thing because as you invest in high quality content, well, it takes more time to load it. So you see your video start time dropping. And we think, we can't scientifically correlate the two, but we think there is probably an incidence between the industry investment in higher quality content and the fact that then the time to start the video gets reduced in terms of user experience. Now, if we look at the global and regional share of viewing time by device, there's two interesting insights that pops up. One is the big screen is the dominant sort of place for streaming. We always think streaming, mobile in terms of assumption, we always consume content, but the truth is people want the best experience for the content they pay for, the higher quality of content. So we can see, interestingly, that between smart TV and connected TV, it eats up pretty much to more than half, up to 70% of the share of streaming content consumption. There's only one exception, which is Asia. And Asia is by definition a mobile, not even first, but mobile only region where lots of internet access and lots of access to content started with mobile. And we said before that they only have 8 minutes against 20 here. Maybe it's a reflection of that, where you start your streaming consumption, and therefore maybe it's more snacking over there and maybe more long-form content in more mature market. If we look at the global year-on-year change in terms of viewing time and the upgrade of app, yeah, there we go. So yeah, if we look at the year-on-year change in terms of viewing time by screen type, again, the smart TV is picking up across the board. Like in Asia is triple digit, which is pretty huge. It's interesting to see that connected devices are not as strong as they used to be, and we've seen a decline with desktop and console, who used to be a little bit from early streaming operators, the darlings of, I'm going to release an app for PS4 and console and stuff like that. But we believe that, again, as smart TV picks up and it becomes the de facto device for couch, why do I turn on my console? Why do I need a PC? Originally, when streaming started, a lot of groups were a bit late to invest in their connected TV device or application, or in smart TV themselves. So a lot of people were deferring to a web function or to their gaming console. But now that smart TV has become almost like a must-have for the content operators, you don't really need to turn your console. It's more complicated, it takes more time. So we also believe that there could be a correlation on this. And we can see that obviously in Europe, between smart TV and connected TV, again, it takes the lion's share and has the highest growth. Now, if we look at the quality by device, again, we can see that there is an increase in that bit rate metrics across the board. It's interesting to note that the increase is that we see a mix of elements, and again, there's been a lot of manufacturers, OEM, that has invested in developing smart TV solution, but the challenge, the conflict between the high quality of the content that the operators wants to push, and at the same time, some of the either application or OEMs or device being a bit new in the market, you see that it impacts the quality of the experience, because not all of them are necessarily developed and built to handle the level of demand from high bit rate and high quality. So that might explain in some instances why on larger screen devices, you see a decrease in the video starts failure and in the video start time. Again, due to that bit rate boost across the board. I thought it would be interesting to look at the complexity of the streaming landscape. I think if we look at one particular nation, it's kind of easy to see who's up there. But any group that has a multi-territory or global operation, it's a nightmare to manage the ecosystem, because there's no clear champion across all these regions. That's the first thing we can see. Now, interestingly, Android is everywhere in these regions. Not on the top, but it's there. So one of our interesting insight is they're coming strong, and they're probably going to continue to grow up their position and rank up. Obviously, Samsung has a top position in 2 regions, and that's quite interesting to know in the sense of the investment they've done in the smart TV space. They're now even announced they're going to launch their own fast channel. So we see very strong interest. Roku is a very American thing, and we add them. I mean, there was a chart there, a slide about the global view of all the sort of brands, but I thought it was not relevant to put Roku there because most of our customer, a good portion of our customer comes from the US, and that probably doesn't portray the reality of Roku being overweighted because our client, a lot of our clients are from the US and they have the biggest amount of customers. But this slide is more relevant to show you that there's no one simple winner. And for all the companies that works in the business, it gets tough to deploy your app on so many environments and so many different sort of leading devices depending on which region you want to tackle. Very quickly to finish on the sort of mobile device quality of experience, because it's very much a smart TV and a mobile device sort of divide in the word. Again, you could see the big takeaway here is that Apple sort of keeps the lead in terms of the quality of experience across most of its devices. And Android is still sort of lagging behind. And it's also something that we see for some of our clients when they do the live sort of analysis. You could see that there's probably not the same maturity. It's the iOS on other sort of OEM or phone manufacturer, and maybe this has an impact on the quality of experience that they can deliver, again, against high-level content. Now, on this aspect, we thought it would be good also to look at the quality by type of content, so between live and video on demand. Obviously, it's something that we were probably all expecting, but it's good to validate it, that the lion's share is taken by on demand across the board, and live takes about 28%. The growth of these two categories are quite similar. But interestingly, we could see that people are investing a lot in their video start when it comes to live, because it's the event, so you want to get access to the content as quickly as possible. And when it comes to video on demand, the investment is more on the bit rate, the quality of the content, and there's a bit of a trade-off out there in the market. If you're watching Disney Plus on your big screen in 4K, you're okay to wait a few seconds for that content to load. If you're on the go on your mobile and you're picking up a live event, you want that video start time to be optimized. So these are the kind of insight that we see being reflected in these numbers. The report is obviously available for free online with a lot more commentary and addition into the actual numbers. And just to finish, we thought it would be also interesting to look at ads. We said at the beginning that it's here to stay, and there's probably going to be more AVOD type of services out there. I think that's reflected in the number of ad attempts grown, almost about 20%. The number of ad impressions, about 25%. It's also interesting to see that as you increase volume, publishers and advertisers want to balance the load of the ads on the user experience. So maybe they reduce the duration to play more of them, but to make them a bit shorter to avoid overloading the customer patience. And what's interesting is we've seen across the board on that quality of experience work that all the publishers have invested heavily to make sure that they reduce the type of errors that can happen when consumers are playing their content. That means, obviously at first for the quality of experience, but also in an AVOD context to make sure that they don't miss the ad impression or ad serving opportunities behind the content that is consumed. And we see this with a reduction, a significant reduction of minus 35% on mis-ad opportunities. So that's it for the presentation of the numbers of this State of Streaming report. Now, the methodology and how does Conviva come up with these numbers. We're streaming analytics platform today. Our approach is to capture the entire user experience from video, from ads, from content, from app interaction with one single sensor. We place this sensor in more than 4 billion devices globally that represent 500 million unique viewers, 200 billion streams per year that we track and analyze, which represent 3 trillion data points every day. And all these data are basically anonymized, aggregated globally, and we extract them, report, and insight by market and region, as you see. We are working today with 8 of the top 10 largest global conglomerates, more than 180 customers globally, and that's one of our strengths, is that global exposure gives us a good view of what streaming is and look like across the board, and we think it's great to contribute to the industry knowledge by first giving to our clients some benchmark to check their data against what's good or bad and where's the best progression margin, but also to share with the industry what is streaming, where it is at the moment, and how is the indicators moving across the board. Thank you, and if you have questions, or if we have time for questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Time for question.
Hi. Several slides back, you had a ranking of the various devices growth year on year, I believe. Is that actually, it's not that they represent that percentage of the market in that territory, yeah. So that's not a reflection of the percentage of market share they have in those territories. That's just the growth that they've had in those territories. Is that correct?
No, that's the share. So if my reading of the data is correct, that's the share. So basically, if we look at these device and the share of streaming that they capture by region, you would see that actually it's not, well, it's...
Because it doesn't add up to 100%, so I'm curious what the
because it's a top 5. So obviously, yeah, that's the main answer. It's a top 5. Yeah, it's a top 5. And you could see the data reflecting the consumption. It's not a surprise that an Android phone is #1 in Asia, because all these cheap Chinese phone, $100 in India and Indonesia, they are the gateways to sachet streaming consumption that Netflix had to adapt in Malaysia first, then in India, where you can buy on the weekend a subscription. If you don't have that access market Android phone, you can't roll out the service and compensate ARPU per user by the volume of the next billion of connected user in this region. So I think that's the...
I'm just surprised that Roku is as high as it is because it's such a shit device.
Well, at least they've made a good job on the distribution. The quality won't be my place to comment on, definitely. Any other question, maybe?
Yeah, one question. I was curious also on that slide to learn more about the Linux set-top box. Do you have any insight on what it is exactly?
Again, I'm not a technician, so I won't be able to tell you more about the Linux set-top box, how we integrated with it, what we thought about it was easy or not. But clearly...
Does that mean it's because it's mainly distributed through network operators?
Sorry?
Does that mean it's because in Africa you have a lot of distribution through network operators, and that might be the reason why we have so much set-top box in the top 5?
I don't have sufficient sort of industry knowledge to tell you why it tops this chart in Africa. Maybe because they're cheaper. I think that's usually a good denominator in emerging markets. And also you can see it's almost like an African exception. They don't appear everywhere else except in Europe in the 4th place, which is again not an interesting data point. Why are they in such a high position in Africa? And what's the sort of drivers? I'm afraid I don't have the answer.
Thank you. I have one question, maybe to go a little further. It's about the streaming protocols, because in your presentations you talk about some devices like Android phones, for example, or smart TVs that are mostly based on Android and are not like from Apple, for example, not in the same proportion. And I'm curious if you know, I don't know, the proportion of HLS and Dash in OTT streaming. Does it have an impact that there is more and more devices that are Dash compatible? Because in the past, HLS was a bit the standard de facto because of the omnipresence of Apple devices, but...
So there's two answers to your question.
Okay.
The first one is, right now, I don't know.
Okay,
And,
no problem.
and it's not in the report because we don't push the report to that level. The second answer, we do capture this data in the level of information we take, so beyond the event and the metadata that we collect from our SDK. Our customers are able to see this and to infer correlation between device, iOS, CDN, ISP. I'm not sure if it goes down to the player, but it's the metadata that we can integrate to help them understand in what context we see what mistake and what are the errors in the quality of experience coming from, so they can resolve it quicker. But it wouldn't make sense to go that deep in this type of report, which is high level and very good. Okay. Thank you very much, guys.
So thanks, David. Now it's time to talk about security. Jim, it's your turn. To change the slides.
Yep.
Bonsoir à tous. I'm sorry, I do speak French, but not well enough to do this presentation. So apologies, my Swiss mother would be very disappointed. My name is Jim Hall. I am going to talk today about content security standardization. Can you hear me okay? Bon. Whoops. What's happening, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some things that are starting to coalesce around content security standards. And I'm going to be talking about token authentication, CBOR stroke CWT, and a little bit about forensic watermarking. So who am I? I'm a principal sales engineer at a company called Fastly. I used to be a COO in a previous life. I've been doing internet-based video delivery since the mid-90s. Yes, I'm that old. And I've spoken at SF, New York, London, and now finally Paris video tech meetups. I'm also a member of SVTA. Did I get it right? Yeah. The Streaming Video Technology Alliance. And I participate in CTA Wave Common Access Token Working Group and the CTA Wave Common Media Server Data Working Group. So enough about me. So content security changes. So what's happening, or what's happened, is since what I call the plague, aka COVID, there's a dramatic increase in piracy. Now, there are other reasons. That's the one that's most cited. I think it also has to do with the substantial increase in OTT platform availability. Everything is moving to streaming, and it's making it harder and harder to get it over the air. And as a result, we at Fastly have seen, and in the industry in general, we've seen increase in customer requests around content security. And that takes several forms, including token authentication, but also things like forensic watermarking. And this is because, A, customers are starting to put a higher value even on their non-premium content, but also because there are now stricter requirements from content rights holders, particularly the major sports brands like La Liga and English Premier League, et cetera, et cetera. So as a result, as I mentioned, we're seeing increased interest in token authentication, but we're also starting to see, and I'm going to call it a burgeoning or the beginning of interest in forensic watermarking. How many of you have heard of forensic watermarking before? Oh, shit. Okay. Oh, by the way, I curse a lot, so I apologize in advance. Sorry, what? Have you heard of forensic watermarking? Okay. More good. So first, I want to talk about the standardization and why there is a move within the industry to standardize. Firstly, with token authentication. How many of you have implemented token authentication? Okay. How many have had to implement multiple types of token authentication? Okay. As someone who has implemented just about everything that you see on this screen, because every customer is a snowflake and wants or needs something slightly differently, I've had to implement almost every one of those that's in there. Fortunately, cookie-based tokens are basically dead. That's my little tombstone there. But my favorite is down at the bottom, and this is new for me anyway. JSON web tokens, or JOTs, as they're supposedly pronounced. And the reason why I was attracted when I heard that there was a standards effort being launched around token authentication, I leapt at the chance because, as I said, nearly every customer has very specific requirements for their implementation of token authentication, and I've done way too many. And I just feel like there has to be a better way. But there's also, why does the industry need to do this? And the reasons why are because at scale, video delivery is largely a multi-CDN effort. And we have to work together. We very often are tied to each other at a hierarchical level as well, not just a lateral level. Meaning one CDN is actually the origin for other CDNs. And handing off and getting authentication and passing it back and forth needs to be standardized. The proprietary or legacy models, they don't provide enough flexibility. And so we need to find a better no-cost solution that provides better security than traditional token models. How many of you understand the concept of token authentication, why it gets used? Okay, good. I just want to make sure I'm not like going over folks' head. So Will Law from Ateme, based on some work we were doing for something else with CMSD and quality of experience in the SVTA, very kindly asked me if I would participate in the Common Access Token Working Group for CTA WAVE, the Consumer Technology Association. And we decided to, or they are working on creating the Common Access Token. And it's designed to be multi-CDN. It's designed for the purposes of everyone working together to ensure the success of our common customer. Not one standard to rule, one vendor's solution to rule them all. And what I love about Will is, Akamai has what some would consider a de facto standard on token authentication, and yet he's pushing for an industry-wide standard. The problem is, there's already a standard, a shared standard. It's called the CDNI's RFC 9246. And they're actually very similar, but there's an important difference. Yes, it's also another standard, but they're very similar in that they both contain a set of claims in an encrypted payload, meaning we're going to put in a bunch of bits of information around when should it expire, where is it valid, what countries is it valid, what paths or URL paths is it valid for, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that gets crammed into a JSON web token. But there's also, so there's a bit that's standardized, but then there's also a mechanism for extending it. So when customers X, Y, and Z want to add their individual required bits for customization, there's a mechanism to do so that fits within the standard. So as I mentioned, we have now two slightly competing standards, RFC 9246 and now Common Access Token, which is not actually a standard yet, it's just in draft. But one of the differences between the two is that CDNI standard uses JSON web tokens, and what CTA Wave is proposing is that we use CWT. Has anyone heard of CWT before? Raise your hand if you've heard of CWT before. One person, great. I've given this talk at London Videotech, and it's basically a public service announcement to try and get a sense of how many people are aware of what is being proposed and how it might impact them. So what is CWT? It stands for CBOR web tokens instead of JWT, which stands for JSON web tokens. What does CWT stand for? Sorry, what does CBOR stand for? No, it does not stand for Cat-Based Object Repository. These are cookie jars, by the way. It's Concise Binary Object Representation Web Tokens, aka RFC 8949. Why use this? Why not just use the thing that already exists, JWT? I personally am a massive fan of JSON web tokens. And the reason why, the clue is in the name. They are concise. They are small. They come down, they reduce the size of the data to a more manageable size. They are, and common access tokens are designed to potentially carry a lot of information, rule sets around time and day and date of when content can and cannot be accessed, and it can be potentially very complex. So it's a big step forward from just your standard, yeah, this URL is valid from this start time to this end time. It can carry very complex information, which is a huge advantage because things like digital rights management, it's very expensive. Is there anybody from a DRM company here tonight? Good, okay. So if you would like to find out more information on token authentication, I've got a bunch of resources here, and you can just email me, jhall@fastly.com, and I will send you this information. My watch is telling me I'm 10 minutes into my presentation. The reason why I'm concerned about CWT is because it relies on CBOR. How many of you have heard of CBOR? One. Okay. 1.5. Not fully committed to it. Yeah. Okay. So the good news is CBOR. There are lots of libraries for CBOR, way more than I was expecting, and so it will be easier for the engineers who are having to create the workflows that generate these tokens to do so. So it's usually somewhere in between the CMS and the video player where this stuff, sorry, I almost said, where this stuff has to be generated. So it's those folks that are probably more likely going to be dealing with this stuff. And it really is just a public service announcement to say, if you don't know what CBOR is or CWT, you should probably start familiarizing yourself with it because it's different. It's not as easy to use as JWT because it's binary. You're converting everything to binary, and there are rules, and so just a heads up. Okay, so the other thing that's starting to standardize is forensic watermarking. And this is good because forensic watermarking has a ton of different vendors. Ateme, do you guys have a forensic watermarking solution? Yeah. Sorry I didn't put you on the list. I wasn't aware, but I mean, it's getting to the point where, you know, my mom has a forensic watermarking solution. But there are a lot of vendors, and there are also a lot of CDNs. And some of these technologies, or one in particular, relies on edge computing in a way that is very interesting, but potentially quite daunting because of the compute power that it might require. And so, you know, we have to develop things that everyone can use, otherwise there's no point. And again, we have to work together for our shared customer. So solutions need to be multi-CDN, in my view. So this standard, which is the -IF interop watermarking standard, I think I got it right, is backed by the Dash Industry Forum, which has lots of great companies, large companies, helping define the Dash standard and its implementation. It's also, it doesn't matter if it's HLS or Dash, actually, it will work with both. So we've got, the good thing is we have a bunch of watermarking companies, or technology providers, that are participating in this. Nagra, Erdetto, Cinemedia, and Verimatrix. There are a few others that I would personally like to also see on there, but so far they haven't bitten. But also, we've got multiple CDN providers. You've got Akamai, you've got CloudFront, and then Fastly is in the process of signing up. We've started contributing, but not as an actual member of the -IF. So hopefully, by beginning of 2023, we will also be a contributing CDN to the specification. And the reason why I bring up the interop watermarking specification is because it will also use CBOR and CWT. And so you now have not one, but two different delivery technologies or technologies involved in video delivery that are now suddenly going to start or thinking about implementing something that very few people have actually heard of on a not day-to-day basis, but in their work life. And if you would like more information on the -IF interop specification, again, I've got the URL up there. How am I doing on time? Okay. And that's actually the end of my presentation. So there's, he's here. Sorry, not you. Where is JB? I saw him earlier. There he is. I was talking to JB at IBC, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? There was a very heated exchange around the validity of some of these solutions, like A/B switched forensic watermarking. And he had some very strong opinions on, sorry? Snake oil, yes, okay. So for the 4K camera, these are not necessarily my opinions. I'm just saying that I think this is a very interesting debate about content protection, who has the right and why are people locking down their content the way that they are. And, you know, what role does something that is less expensive or free, like a better token authentication solution, how does that fit into the ecosystem of, you know, premium rights holders, et cetera, et cetera? But also, JB had some very strong points about how good forensic watermarking is at actually preventing piracy. Depending on your skill set and depending on your knowledge of how video works, how forensic watermarking works, it actually can be fairly easy to bypass and generate something that can be restreamed and redistributed. And that's actually where a lot of the piracy is coming from. It's not, you know, my mom's not going, you know, not at home, like, you know, trying to copy this stuff. These are professional pirates that are making a real business out of redistributing content they don't own. Anyway, sorry, I've rambled a bit. Any questions? Simon? Oh.
Hey, so you talked a lot about standards, but there are actually drafts. Do you have any target date for actual
I believe the CTA Wave Common Access Token is the draft is supposed to be, first draft is supposed to be finalized by end of or beginning of Q4, so it's coming. But I don't have the exact date. I will ping Will and ask. The others are, the forensic watermarking is also a draft. That's why I was saying it was burgeoning and sort of like this is coming and you may need to be aware of it. Any other questions?
And my question is more about the context. So I'm not sure if you have data about that, but you mentioned that piracy was a thing for sports as well. Would you say that now it's more a sport thing or, let's say, scripted entertainment thing? Like when you have a look at your clients? And my second question is, I know that French people are very good at piracy. Is it still a thing? Like, are we still on the top worldwide, or?
So I'll answer the second question first. The second question is, I have no idea on the geographic breakdown of piracy. The first question, scripted content versus sports. Most of the customers that are investigating, implementing, or plan to implement forensic watermarking are doing it because of sports rights rather than scripted content rights. And where we are seeing more of an interest in token authentication is people who own content that is being created on their platform, but don't want to spend the money. So for example, we had a customer who provides sort of coaching services. They were interested in forensic watermarking, not because it's sport content per se, but because the people that would be creating the content are perhaps celebrities, et cetera, et cetera. I'm fascinated and terrified by deep fakes, but I don't know enough about them to really comment on it.
Hi. I must admit I have no idea what forensic watermarking is.
Okay.
I mean, I know what watermarking is, but
Yep.
would you mind giving a rundown of what it is?
Do I have time? Okay. Well, I don't want to screw up the last guy's chance to talk. I actually made what I thought was a hilarious presentation on forensic watermarking. And I showed it to one of the providers and they were like, that's awesome. So I'm going to keep going with it. I don't want to show it here because it hasn't been vetted internally. But in A/B watermarking, which is the thing that I'm talking about here, you basically apply a watermark to the video twice. You make an A version of the watermark and you make a B version of the watermark. And then, because streaming functions in chunks of video or byte ranges, so every X seconds you get a new chunk of video, you can alternate. Is it an A version of the watermark or a B version of the watermark? And if you do a section of, I can't remember if it's 21 or 24, I think it's 24, sequences of alternating ABs, you get like 16 million variants of patterns. And that can be attributed, in theory, to you as a user or to her as a user. And then the forensic part kicks in, and that is there are technologies out there that allow these companies to scan the interwebs for these patterns where they shouldn't be. And then they can, in theory, pinpoint that pattern to a specific user, and then they know she leaked it and she's sending it to all her mates in, I don't know, Lyon, I don't know, but redistributing the content illegally. This is where
I mean, the idea is completely idiotic, right? So it makes literally no sense, right? Because, of course, well, the good idea of watermarking is that you're supposed to encode per user, right? And actually encode per user, but that costs so much, right? So some people do that. For example, Disney does that for unique copies when they give like pre-recorded versions of whatever, right? So the Festival de Cannes, for example, does that and so on, right? But of course, you're not going to do that for millions. It costs you too much. So they say, and also the problem is that if it's in the video or in the audio, you can see it and detect it and filter out, right? Because usually it's detailed, so you do apply any low-pass filter and you get that. So the idea they came up was just like, oh, we are going to encode twice and do some stuffing, which is meaning that the packets are going to be a bit different. And so just by looking at the size, you're going to know more or less which one it is, right? And they're going to be able to pinpoint to one person, right? So in theory, that's good, right? But it's only good for the people who sell those solutions because it makes no sense, right? Because now what I'm going, because I'm a bad guy, I'm going to have 2 players or maybe 3 players, like imagine with 2. And of course, one is going to get A, B, 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 A, right? And the other one is going to be A, B, B, right? And so I do an average, right? So I take 2 guys and so you can, it's going to be valid because of course all those are junk of Dash and HLS, but you're not going to pinpoint that, right? So now I'm not going to do it with 2 guys, but with all the guys here, right? Like I can get 100 IPs easily in any data center, and so, well, you're going to pinpoint to something that doesn't exist. So it's useless, you cannot trace it back, you make money for people who sell forensic watermarking solutions.
Ateme, would you like to rebut? Yes.
Yeah. To piggyback, so since Fastly is a CDN, that's why you go into this stuff, right? I mean, if you have to distribute a specialized version of a movie to everybody, then you have some added value or something.
So to be clear, Fastly is not actually, we distribute on behalf of our customers, but Fastly in and of itself is not implementing the watermarking. We don't add the watermark. All we're doing is helping manage the A/B switching. It's because Fastly acts as and CDNs act as a giant proxy, and we know which one is which on the origin, so that, but it's obfuscated to the end user. They just see, I want segment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fastly and all the other CDNs have to know, do they want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5A or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5B? And so our role in this is a bit, I don't know if benign is the right word, but a bit passive. We're just told we need to switch to either this one or that one. But the standard that is being developed is a really good way that allows multiple vendors working with multiple CDNs to implement it. Without having to have a bespoke solution for one watermarking provider that only works with one CDN. It doesn't scale. And if you're doing video on a global or large scale, you need multi-CDN, if only just for active passive redundancy. In case one CDN takes a powder, goes kaput, then you have the other CDN at the ready. But everything has to be the same on that second CDN. So, yep.
Hello. Yeah. So I'm from Ateme, right?
Hi.
Hey. So I just should be clarifying my meaning. So we do not do watermarking ourselves.
Okay.
We do integrate with the watermarking solutions you have shown. And
are you participating in the -IF forensic watermarking?
I think it's quite a mess, I must say, in terms of who provides this and the technology, etc. So I would be happy to have standardized solution which we could integrate, because that's much better. That's it.
Génial. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Okay. So now I will switch to a very different area, what you just showed you. So I'm Frédéric Cretet. I'm head of operation of Embrace, co-founder of the company. What is Embrace? Embrace, it's a software company. We are a software editor. The company has 7, 8 years ago now, and we develop solution for collaboration, for automation in the media industry. So we have now a lot of customers. So of course, when you start the company in France, where we start the company in Boulogne-Billancourt in France, and now we have customers outside France. We start doing project now in US, and it's okay. It's good for us. So today I will share with you. I will not try to sell a product, but share with you the concept of Pulse-it. Pulse-it, it's a orchestration workflow solution we developed, and I would like to share with you the journey and the different concept of the orchestration. And of course, we developed this product for the media industry. So
currently it's used mostly for content preparation, for managing process in post-production. So sometimes very close to streamings, but sometimes very far away from the streaming area. So before to focus on the product, just a few technical connections we have. So first, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, so we don't redevelop a web server, don't redevelop a database system. We build everything from existing components, from open source standard components. One point important for us is the security. Of course, just sorry for that. Next. So what security is important? We founded the company 8 years ago. So 8 years ago, it was not necessarily in the subject inside the post-production area. And now, of course, it's a mandatory subject. So we are lucky. We have some developer in our company which used to develop before Embrace software to manage financial transactions. So we think we have a good backend and a strong solution to manage the security question. So all what we do is web-based, so we don't need to install anything on your computer to interact in the different solution, of course. And we have the generic thinking in mind. So I will show you some example after. We don't do specific development for a specific customer or for specific third-party tools. We try to do everything on the generic thinking. So we will speak about orchestration. So what is orchestration? I'm sure every one of you has his own definition of what it is. So we will speak about media supply chain, we will speak about track, a production process, or we don't know. So every software vendor has a definition. So I will try to show you our definition. So when you have orchestration, you have the concept of business process. You have many business processes. So what is a business process? It's a succession of different steps, technical steps, of course. So for example, you watch folder, you detect a file, you push the file to a transcoder, a QC system, an audio normalization stuff, and you push the file to the playout server or to VOD, for example. So it is a view of business process. For our point of view, we believe a business process is more something like that. So you have technical interaction and user interaction. So for example, you put a file to a transcoder. Next, you have a user which reviews the file. Next, you have another step for QC, for example, to QC, and another user validates content, etc., etc. And we believe a good business process is need to have a good user interaction. So you see there is two kind of steps in the orchestration, in your business process. You have technical interaction and you have user interaction. So we'll focus on these two points. So first, I will focus on how we can do for user. So 8 years ago, when we start to developing the product, we looked at what was on the market and what we found. There is great user interface for tech engineer people, you, and there is almost nothing for daily user. So what is the user interface for the daily user? So the guy will just push a file to the system and need to try to trigger something. So most of the time it's this, the file explorer. So you drop a file in a file explorer, you pray, and you maybe receive an email to be sure something happened. So it is the first case. Or you have this kind of example. You need to install a very software on your computer with a lot of parameters, a lot of fields, a lot of methods. It's very complicated, and your job is just to type something on the left in one field, and that's it. And you don't have to choose any other field because you don't know absolutely what it will look like. So it's not a great experience for your daily user. So what was our conclusion? We need to have something, a bespoke forms to user business need. So for example, if you need to review media and just enter a technical metadata or a description, you need to have a forms with a video player, a text field to enter your description, and that's it. Nothing less, nothing more. So how to do that? So the first idea we have is to ask our customers to write a simple HTML file and upload the file to in the system. Definitely a bad idea because you are not developer. So I'm sure every one of you have some skills on HTML5 or JavaScript, but definitely you have other stuff to do. So we need to find another way. So what we do, we developed a form designer. So it's very easy to use. You just drag and drop some field in the user interface, and in a few minutes, you are able to design the form for your user. So you can change all the parameters, change the color, change the completely manage the look of your form very simply just by changing parameter. So it's good, but of course, when you design forms, you still have some customization to do. So we have, of course, all the classic of the HTML5 component, radio button, checkbox, text, etc. And of course, you have some specific component for the media, so a video player, of course, and some stuff to select and interact with production storage. So when you design a form, you need to sometimes add magic in your forms. For example, you enter a few lines. If you change a parameter in a button, you want a text field appear or disappear. You want to control the data. You want to do some stuff. So definitely, we didn't develop a form designer without code. So what is the best way to manage this kind of interaction? To have the maximum flexibility is to have a solution with low code. So what is the concept of low code? The concept is to add the ability to enter a few lines of code only when it's useful. So if you need to manage, I don't know, a validation of forms, most of the time it's one line of JavaScript to do that. And we integrated that in our form designer. So for this form, for example, I have a condition tab, and I just have only to type my condition to make the field mandatory, make the field visible, etc. And it's a very, very basic JavaScript syntax. So I'm sure every one of you can do that. And in a few minutes, you are able to add some magic in your form, and you don't need to be a strong web developer to do that. So with that, we are able to create and design in a few minutes, most of the time, a form which match exactly the business need without any limitation. And with that, your customers, your daily user is of course very happy. You have this form, you can customize the look of the form, add the brand the form to the company name, etc., etc. So if we go back to our business process, we have user interaction, of course, but we have also technical integration. You need to interact with a transport system, a QC system, a MAM, etc., etc., traffic system. So when you develop a workflow orchestration solution, you need to have a workflow engine. So same for the forms. Before we started the development, we took a look at what was on the market. So there was some open source solution which was sometimes limited or sometimes too complex to integrate in our solution. The idea is you don't need to have an alien brain to use the solution. That would be very simple. And so commercial solution are not really open, and any customization generates a lot of cost and delay. So if you need to ask your software provider, okay, I need to integrate my solution to these third-party tools. Okay, no problem, 20K in 6 months. Oh, I need to have next month. Okay, no problem, 40K. So definitely, we think we can do differently, and it's a lot of perspective for us. So what was in common in our workflow engine on the market since a long time, it's the concept of the nodal interface. So you just have a list of tasks, you drop your task on your, and you literally draw your technical workflow just by connect the different tasks. So we do that, and many other software vendors do that. So it's probably the best way to design your technical workflow. And it generates a lot of flexibility and a lot of possibility. So, but of course, when you develop a workflow engine, when you come to the market, you need to have a lot of integration with a lot of third-party tools, to a lot of transcoders, with the whole ecosystem of the media industry. So you need to have integration. So of course, when you how to do that, so and of course it's a huge amount of works, and how to manage that. So if when I discussed with my head of engineering, okay, can we integrate Pulse with I don't know Telestream Vantage? And the response, of course, is no. We don't do any bespoke development for any third-party tools. So how we manage that? In the workflow engine, there is a generic task. So we have generic tasks for REST or SOAP web services for old school integration. But with the REST task, the regular web services, you are able to design an integration with any third-party tools. And we have a feature to transform a technical workflow, as I showed you before, to a new task. And most of the integration with Pulse don't require any custom development. It's just a workflow we transform to a task. But the customers, you can access to the original workflow if you want. You can modify it and create your, or if you have an internal solution, you can design a new task for you to optimize the process when you create your workflow. The second important stuff in the workflow engine is the concept also of flow code. So when you use different tasks to design your workflow, you probably need to you probably have sometimes you do 85% of the work without any problem, but just on terms of parameter. Sometimes you have a needs and you don't have the task to do that. I don't know, the example is, okay, you need to copy file to this storage, but you need to check if the first character of the file name is our number, for example. And with your workflow engine, you probably don't have the kind of task to do this test. So what we think and what we do, we add the ability to enter native Python scripting inside the different parameters in the workflow engine. So you see here it's a very basic task for copy or move file. You can just enter a regular variable name to define your input path, etc. But you can, if you need, it's not mandatory, but you can enter generic Python scripting to define an output path, for example. It's true Python scripting, not something we customize for us. So if you have some skills in Python, you just write regular Python syntax and that's it. And because it's regular Python, you ask if you have any question, you ask the question to Google, you go to Stack Overflow and you paste the code directly in Pulse and it works. So with that, you have a lot of flexibility and you are able to fix any small problem you have. I have many examples in mind to solve the problem of business needs. You need to create a custom timestamp. You have Python to manipulate the date, etc., without limitation. So just a quick word about the technical infrastructure. So when you process workflow, of course, you have sometimes a lot of load. So of course, we don't manage everything with only not a single server. We have we call it pulsed server. It's the brain of the system, and all the technical workflow are executed on agent. And if you need to process a lot of file, you can have any number of workflow, any number of agents you want, and the system will manage and repair and distribute the task on every agent available. So, of course, in 20 minutes is very short to show you a lot of aspects of Pulsuit, but we believe user experience is crucial. So there is many interfaces with many dashboards to interact with user, and for each user interface, it's the same concept. You can do most of the job with drag and drop, but if you need to do something custom with a specific need, you have the ability to write a few lines of Python or few lines of script of JavaScript to solve any kind of problem. So we have it is the same concept for user interaction and also for the to monitor and all the execution of the system. Do you have any question? So just to finish, every component, everything is built over component standard. So as I said at the beginning, we didn't reinvent the wheel. So it's built over Python, Django, Nginx, etc., etc. So if you need to have something strong to have, for example, a system with high availability, it's very easy to use this kind of solution. Now our system works also in Docker. So I'm sure you are aware of that. It's okay for me.
Yes, thank you. I have just one question. I think I missed a transition in your presentations because at the beginning you were talking about a tool that was easy to use for someone who is not a developer or that.
Yes.
And after you changed to talk about the workflow.
So you have two kinds of users. You have the daily user, which only access to form and just do what you have to do and click on one button and that's it. So we do the maximum to make the life for the daily user very simple. But on the other side, to configure and design the workflow, you have a maximum of tools to and with the low code to do what you want without any limitation.
Okay. So there is two kind of users because at first when I saw that the user had to enter his own ffmpeg command, I was like, if it's someone who is writing code. And my second question is, how do you validate that your design is actually easy enough to use for a user?
So for the form or for the technical workflow?
Actually, both of them.
Okay, so for the form you so for the form you have a preview button and you can show you can have a view of the forms in the same way it will display for the final user. So if you need to if you have a lot of constraints, respect the color chart of the ground, etc., you can just put the same color and that's it to have exactly the same look and feel. And for the technical workflow, we have tools to we have a workflow player to play with your workflow. You have a debugger. You can monitor and see all your variables in your system in the HTML page. So it's very easy to.
The thing is, I agree with you because for me it seems very simple.
Yeah.
But do you have an internal process to validate that actually it is simple? Because sometimes I had some struggles with some clients.
Yeah.
For me, it was easy to just click on one button, but for them it was maybe too complicated. I don't know.
No,
I was a bit lost about what should I do in my design.
You just drag and drop. There is a preview button, and you can change all the parameters of the form. So the content of your form, but also the look. So if you need to customize a color, you need to manipulate the CSS. There you can do everything only by changing parameter, and you don't need to have developer skills to do that. Of course, behind the scene, it's generate CSS code, but you don't need to be an expert to that. So if you need to try different color, different size, different fonts to make the form match exactly the user need, it's very, very fast, and you don't need to you change, you save, and that's it. And it's real time online. You don't need to have a process of upload of. It's real time update.
Thank you.
So it can work on your. I'm not sure I have listen your question, but it works on your premises. It can work fully in the cloud if you need. And we also support hybrid mode, so the server and 2 agents can be in your premises and 2 agents in the cloud. If you need, it's just a problem of network, but technically for us, no problem to that.
Actually, regarding the scalability, can you pop some agent in the cloud, like Docker's agent? Like
currently, for the problem is when you execute workflow, you need to monitor the load of your system. And of course, we manage a queue of the workflow, etc. We can manage a number of workflow we can execute in the system. But if you are 200 of workflow in your queue list, but if your workflow is just execution of web services, your 200 workflow will be executed in 5 seconds probably. So it's very complicated to manage the load. So we are working on it, but currently we have something to not saturate the system. So there is an interface for that. We can send notification with there is a lot of queue in the system, and after that you can manually trigger and turn on some agents. But we are working on it to make your new machine awake in real time, but it's very, very complicated to monitor the load and because you don't know what's the load of the next workflow to be executed.
Any other questions?
Merci beaucoup.
J'espère.